Yes, let's first of all get the famous Charles Lynn. Sorry, he's famous for this Canada Net Zero Challenge. We've been doing this anyway for a few decades now, right, Charles?
Yes, that's right. No, not quite. Just a couple of years. Okay, should I start now?
Yes, why don't you start, and I will send to
Andrew
information on Sarah so he can connect to her somehow. Okay. I just got to find the email I got from her.
Okay, I have her email address. Don't worry, I have it.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that's the one. Yeah. You send that to her, then she can join this session.
So I'm going to share screen now and then start.
Please.
Okay.
Okay. So how do I minimize this? I'll just leave it like that. So this is a talk on several citizens, Canadians, taking some action on the country's net zero challenge. It's a big topic and it's a small group, and here's our story. The team members, so the outline is the team members, a disclaimer, just full disclosure, and then I'll go to some survey results by Abacus Data, which is a market and opinion research firm that has conducted climate-related surveys over the last last few years. And then I'll talk a little bit about our project, which is called Impact Net Zero. We launched our website a year ago, just before CMOS, and I talked about that last year. So I'm going to review year one progress and then go to year two plans and then next steps. So the team members, I'm the founder and lead of this project. I'm a retired atmospheric scientist with my career at two universities, U of T and McGill, and then the federal government, Environment and Climate Change Canada. The rest of the members of the team have day jobs, and their affiliations are not shown here because the views expressed in this presentation do not reflect those of the employers of the team members. Full disclosure, we have not accepted any external funding for the work described, and all expense to date has been covered by out of pocket by myself. So some survey results first. This is a survey of Canadians on climate action by the government. The question posed is, generally speaking, how would you like to see governments in Canada emphasize policies that reduce GHG emissions? And the survey was conducted October 2021, a survey of 2,200 Canadians. So green means more emphasis, red means less emphasis, and gray means just about right. So you can see 2 out of 3 Canadians, 66%, think the government should be doing more. 15%, 1 in 6 or 1 in 7, think they should be doing less. Even in Alberta, oil and gas country, 48%, 1 in 2 Albertans think the government should be doing more. So there's a lot of support for government to do more. Just what exactly that more is of course debatable, right? And that is indeed part of the debate that the governments at various levels and NGOs and industry are having. But the message is clear, right? There's strong support for government, which ultimately needs to take the lead on all of this, to increase their role. Second survey result on EVs, and this was done in January of this year. The question asked is, do you think it is likely that EVs will become the majority of vehicles that consumers drive at some point in the future? At the time of the survey, 4 in 5 Canadians, 80%, think it is either certain or likely that this would be the case. And this percentage has increased from 71% 2.5 years ago, March 2019, or almost 3 years ago, to the present. So over the last 3 years, there's been a steady increase in the number of Canadians who believe that EVs will take on a larger and larger role. And the survey also has other questions on, within 15 years, 50% think, I believe 50% think that this would take place within 15 years. 15 years, that's correct. So there are more questions in the survey that probe deeper. But again, the message is clear, right? That there could be a sea change occurring. Right now, the penetration rate of EVs in Canada is 10% or less. So to go from that figure to a majority is a steep climb. This has been done before, right? Norway has a penetration rate of about 80% now. 15 years ago, they were like Canada. And that's a combination of government initiatives and carrots and sticks, rebates, parking fees, and so on that accomplished it. Now I move on to something called the Avoid, Shift, Improve framework. This was described in the UNEP Emissions Gap Report of 2020. And it focuses on personal consumption options. Actions that you and I, as individuals, can do. And what this framework does is it categorizes options on consumption, personal consumption, in different domains, and their carbon mitigation potential, their potential to reduce GHG emissions. The framework does not prescribe how choices are made, because we make choices depending on our own context, right? Cultural, economic, community, different contexts. Avoid means giving up a choice or action. So in the context of mobility, personal mobility, that could mean I take one less long-haul flying trip less per year. So you give up something. A shift means you change to a less carbon-intensive action. So it could mean instead of driving to work, I take the subway and the bus. Improve means you increase the efficiency without changing the underlying action. So you could be moving to a gas-powered car to a hybrid car or to an EV. Now, what this study does is it categorizes these different actions in 3 sectors: mobility, food, and residential. How you get around, what you eat, and your home. And the unit in carbon mitigation potential is tons per CO2 per capita per year. So it's not gigatons, it's not megatons, but it's tons. By taking certain actions, you have the potential of reducing the carbon emission by so many tons. And the unit here, I'll just move this, is in the single digits, 1 ton, 2 tons, 3 tons, and so on. And these are the quartile estimates and the mean and so on. Right? So by taking various actions in the mobility sector, in the food sector, in the residential sector, there's the potential of reducing personal emissions by few tons. And what this study does is it's a fairly exhaustive study of a survey of published works in journals and arriving at results like this. So this is already reduced in complexity by UNEP in their report from the original scientific paper, which is quoted here in very small print, Ivanova et al. 2020. Now, the message here, there are examples of different different examples given here and the mitigation potential. This study adds up all the actions you can take in mobility, in food, and in residential, and it comes up to a figure of about 9 tons that you can reduce per capita per year. 9. So let's put this figure in perspective. Let's look at 4 numbers on GHG emissions. The annual GHG emission for the world is 48.9 gigatons, 48.9 billion tons. Canada emits 730 megatons, 730 million tons, which is about 1.5% of the global total. Per capita, you divide 730 by about 35, 37 million people, you get about 19 tons per person per year. So while Canada emits as a country 1.5% of the total emissions, per capita, we're among the highest in the world. And this study by Ivanova et al. That I mentioned adds up all the mitigation potential of the different personal actions you can take in the different sectors and arrives at a figure of 9.2 tons. In other words, the mitigation potential is up to half of Canada's per capita emissions. 9.2 is for about half of 19. So what this says is that there is potential for Canadians as a citizen to reduce their potential, their mitigation, there's potential to reduce their emissions. Right? And this is much more meaningful. When you tell Canadians that the mitigation potential is half of your per capita emissions, this is much more meaningful than talking about gigatons and megatons, right? Which means almost nothing to the person on the street. And this is also action oriented. You you take one less long haul trip, you reduce your meat consumption, you go to a heat pump or insulate your home better. And all these actions are spelled out in tables with much more details in Annex 3 of the UNEP report or Ivanova et al. So this is the basis of our project. We want to empower Canadians. We don't want to talk about gigatons and megatons. We want to talk about what you can do, tons. So this is our website, launched a year ago. And the target audience are Canadians who could act if nudged with the appropriate knowledge. Surveys have shown that there are many Canadians are concerned, but they don't quite know what to do. Progress in the first year, we have published 50 articles under 4 topics: what's new, Canada, make an impact, tools and tips. We have worked with 2 grassroots organizations as partners. We have launched a Facebook page. I have given talks to different audiences, and we have recruited young team members. In the first phase, we focused on pushing out material, articles, education. In the second phase, we focus on 2 other E's, engagement and empowerment. So this is a snapshot of the landing page. Read about mobility, adoption of EVs in Canada, and net zero. And we show the statistics, including the example of Norway, and then living a car-free lifestyle in both languages. So this is a snapshot of different articles. We just held a Net Zero Cafe, which is an online discussion forum to get informed and share views on our journey, on the country's journey to net zero. And we focus on individual actions and choices. The inaugural cafe was held 2 weeks ago on low carbon mobility. And that's the poster you see there on the bottom right. And it was a discussion with 4 panel members, citizens like you and me, who have made diverse choices in personal mobility. One has a young family with 2 children who does not have a car. Another one has an EV, yet another one drives, but makes very conscious decisions with her family on how they drive and to minimize the driving experience. We have a recording available at our website. So this is the homepage. If you click on Net Zero Cafe, you will see the recording and you can watch here. And this is the poster for the cafe, where we say that we have an online open discussion, and then the link and the Facebook page link as well. So in year 2, we're going to focus on engagement and empowerment. In particular, individuals as consumers and citizens. As consumers, you can make choices and take actions that reduce emissions. An example is the framework that I just showed. This one. This is a framework that categorizes and gives you the mitigation potential, but does not prescribe how choices are made. That's up to each and every one of us. As citizens, we can exercise our civic responsibility, our responsibility as a citizen. Just, for example, we can just talk about our actions. And talking about it has impact. And I don't have specific evidence for that, but I have anecdotal evidence. When people talk to you and you mention your climate actions and it changes their mind, they don't come back and tell you, generally, right? But I know from anecdotes that this can have impact. It is a slow process, but it can have impact. You can advocate through grassroots organizations. You can get involved politically. Ontario just had its provincial election. Doug Ford got in with a resounding majority, which doesn't bode well for the kinds of climate actions we're talking about. But I was keeping a close tab and supporting, right, some of the candidates. In my riding, the Liberal candidate lost by 1% of the vote, which is a bit disappointing because if she had won, I would be knocking on her door. You can consider ESG, environmental social governance aspects in investment. By exercising our civic responsibility, so let me backtrack. As a consumer, you are not talking about gigatons and megatons. You're talking about tons. One less long-haul flight is roughly 1 ton reduction in emissions. That's fine. But if you want to magnify that impact, You have to go to the second bullet, citizens. You talk about it, you advocate, you get involved politically, and then you get involved or you become an activist in investment. At the plenary talk today, the speaker mentioned that there's a big push on divestments. And that's the fourth bullet here, ESG and investment. And she showed a graph where divestment is leading to potential reduction measured in gigatons. So now you can go back up from tons to maybe tens of tons, and if you're lucky, hundreds of tons. And if you're really lucky, getting involved in investment activists and investors, or getting involved politician, you can magnify that number. All right. Again, divestment efforts start with a small group of people. Students at universities, activist investors for pension funds, and so on. But the impact, as we heard from today's plenary, can be measured back in gigatons. So the first bullet, you go from gigaton to megaton to tons. And then as the second bullet, as citizens, you magnify that up through your community, through your network, and so on. Next steps, we will continue to publish articles. We will grow the Net Zero Cafe strategies. We will continue to work with grassroots organizations. And food and mobility, residential are three domains that people understand. Right? It is not like emissions from oil and gas sector, just transition. Those things are much more complex. But how you get around, what you eat, and what you do in your own home, people identify with that. And that's the hope we're going to take. We will be working with interested citizens. The youth are leads in this. We will improve our social media presence. We have just initiated a Facebook page. We have just a nascent Instagram presence. We will engage with politicians. Right? As I said, the provincial Ontario election was a bit of a disappointment, but we also have contacts with Toronto politicians at the city councillors at the municipal level. And of course, I have an invitation for you to join us in whatever capacity you think might be appropriate. And thank you for your attention, and I hope to hear from you. So I'll stop there.
Well, thank you, Charles. Very nice presentation. Interesting. I really liked the way you talked about us, let's say, activating the science community itself, get out and speak and things. The going from, was it citizens to communications? I forget exactly the words you used, but
Yeah.
I was talking about that in an earlier presentation today, but I think it's important that we as the science community, and since you asked us to join you, I'll set the precedent by saying I'll join you.
Okay, so we'll communicate offline, Gordon.
Yeah, we'll do that offline. So let's get some other comments and discussion. People who are, maybe you can stop sharing your screen. Yeah, and then we could able to put up their hands to ask questions, comments. Otherwise, I noticed some people who were on this session who weren't on the previous one. Like I think I saw Peter Taylor's name among the 29, 30 people who have been watching and listening, I hope. Listening, I'm sure. Brugman says she'll join too. That's the
Okay.
Okay, Tom Robinson and then Alexander Trashchenko. Tom.
Charles, excellent talk. I'd have so many questions, but I guess just going back to your first slide about 66% of Canadians in favor of more action, I presume, from government. You know, there's a lot of actions that people can take. EVs, they're very expensive. Solar panels on houses are almost non-existent. These things require policy changes to make these things affordable to people. Have you explored, well, I was going to ask, have you explored how many of that 66% would actually cast their vote based on those census, but then you raised the issue of the Ontario election, so obviously not many. How might you get that? Like if 66% of people voted for a party, they would win almost every seat.
I don't have the answer to your question, Tom. I don't know how that 66% actually translates into votes. Now, of course, voting is more than just climate issues, right? Voting is speaks to your values, right? What you hold important, and it's not just climate. And politicians also need to. Politicians, some are better than others at spinning a narrative, and Doug Ford is very good, right, at spinning a narrative that he's saving you money and he's looking after Ontarians, right? So there is a gap between, you know, asking government to do more and what exactly does do more mean, and voting.
Just to say that we're going to be running out of time soon, so I'll ask the questions and the answers to be short. Alexander, next.
Hello, Charles. Very nice talk. Nice to see you. It's a long time no see. And short question: why net zero is not equivalent to inventing the perpetuum mobile?
Why net zero is not equivalent to what?
Perpetuum mobile, the engine that works for nothing, so producing energy from nothing. Perpetuum mobile. It's, I guess it's Latin, you know, eternal, the engine.
I didn't catch the words.
Perpetuum mobile.
I'm not sure what that word means either. Say.
Yeah, the engine that produces the energy can work, you know, infinitely producing something. It was a medieval time, and it was popular idea until was French Academy said that it's impossible to invent this machine.
No, but okay, if we're talking about perpetual motion machines, that is not what net zero is about.
Yeah, that's
net zero. Right? Net zero means for every ton of carbon you add in the atmosphere, you have to remove it so that there's a net zero. So mitigation, you can either go to zero or you go to net.
Yeah.
Removing the carbon, you need the energy.
See, yeah, I think there's some opportunities here, but let's, we have to move on since we have two more speakers and I'm the third of that. Or anyway. But we're going to have Sarah next if she's here. I think I saw her name on the list.
Hello.
There's the famous Sarah. Are you from the Cente area as well in BC?
No, I'm from Regina, Saskatchewan, but I'm living in Edmonton right now.
Okay, no need to apologize. I just, because I was trying to track down who Armel was, and I realized he was, because I used to live in, anyway, enough of that. I mean, this is Sarah Hoffman, who is from Environment and Climate Change Canada, involved in, and you're going to talk about sea ice and, well, Arctic things and weather and stuff like that. So you go ahead.
Okay, I'm just going to share my screen. I think I'm getting a package right now, but, oh. Well, I have to allow it.
Oh, maybe you're not allowed. I thought you should be, but I don't know how to do that. Is one of the organizing people can CMOS? No, that's someone else. Okay.
Hey, I'm the volunteer running the session. Sarah, as far as I can tell, you should be able to share your screen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, this is saying I have to quit and reopen. So I'm just gonna quickly do that. Sorry about that. Okay. How is this? Okay, can everyone hear me still?
And we can see your slide.
And you can hear me, right?
Yes,
Yes, okay. Okay, great. Sorry about that. My name is Sarah Hoffman. I am an acting warning preparedness meteorologist for the North. I work quite closely with Armel Castellan, who is also a warning preparedness meteorologist here at ECCC. I wanted to acknowledge that I'm on Treaty 6 territory. I'm joining you from Edmonton, and I work at the Prairie and Arctic Storm Prediction Center in Edmonton. I think I was the last person to join this team, so I wanted to acknowledge and honor the work done by David, Laura, Adrian, and Armel. Joining this team has been really impactful and really meaningful to my career. I've learned so much from the work we've done with our partners in the North and from these colleagues, so I'm really appreciative. Funding from this work has come from all over, but it started with a MEOPAR project. It was really focused and directed by the people from the Nunavut settlement region in the north to understand impactful weather and how to create better products and tools for them moving forward as they encounter more and more changing weather due to climate change and sea ice as well. So this figure on the left-hand side here, or this graph, this is what we mean by Nunavut settlement region. When we're talking about it, this is in the NWT. In particular, we met with folks in Sax Harbor, Ulukuktuk, Tuktoyaktuk, and Inuvik. The intention is to better understand impactful weather and sea ice in these areas, as well as develop or improve products to benefit society. We had many trips. I didn't attend the trips north, but Armel, Adrian, Laura, and David did go north quite a few times. And, the very first trip was essentially to build trust and establish the relationships between us as researchers and the locals, and really get off on the right foot and build the relationship. And then it was subsequent trips where we actually came and asked for knowledge from the communities, and it was really focused on gaining that knowledge and how that can relate to improving service delivery up there. And actually, it was on one of these trips that Randy Pokiak in 2014 asked, why is it that researchers always come north and take the knowledge south, and northerners never come south and bring the knowledge north? And it was a really good point, which we listened to. And in February 2019, we brought research assistants south to the University of Victoria and the Prairie and Arctic Storm Prediction Center in Edmonton. So that's in the top left-hand corner here. That's Manny on the left, Jack on the right. Manny is from Sax Harbor, Jack is from Ulukuktuk. And these pictures are from when David provided some, basic meteorology courses to them at the University of Victoria. We learned all about, basic tools and principles of forecasting so that they could become sort of the weather go-to people from their communities. So I also want to point out in the left-hand corner here, there's Laura with Manny and Jack, and she's there again in the bottom left-hand corner, and she was instrumental in the relationship building portion of our work. working with Indigenous communities in Canada, we have a great sort of history that precedes us. And in order to get over that preceding history, we have to really focus on building relationships and building trust. And she was integral in that work. And because of her, we were able to really establish lasting relationships that exist to this day. So we're super grateful. She's instrumental to this work. So this is when we got, Jackie and Manny got to the offices at the Edmonton Storm Prediction Center, or the Edmonton Prairie and Arctic Storm Prediction Center, I should say. We met for 2 days in February, and it was a lot about getting to know each other and sharing knowledge. I think a big goal of that trip for Manny and Jack was to peek behind the curtain at Environment and Climate Change Canada. I think a lot of the products we issue as an organization have a lot of mystery about them. And especially about how they're produced. And I think sometimes they can have the appearance of being automated, and people don't really realize that there's, a person there issuing these and working on them. And I think a lot of users across Canada, not just Jack and Manny, would love to come and learn from themselves how these products are produced. And I think they're really excited to bring the knowledge back home. So part of peeking behind the curtain was actually meeting the people at our operations center and seeing, the tools we use to produce these forecasts, our 5 to 6 computer screens, our weather maps, as well as the software and forecasting tools we used. We explained that there are 2 offices in Edmonton, one with forecasters dedicated to the aviation side of things and others dedicated to public products like alerts, forecasts, and marine forecasts. We also explained that these offices are 24/7, 365 days a year. So on Christmas Day at 3 a.m., there's a forecaster watching the weather and producing products. The other part of peeking behind the curtain was to build relationships with forecasters. We lucked out on during their trip because we had many forecasters with a history and a passion for the North. There's David Ioshi in the right-hand corner. He's an aviation forecaster for the Arctic, and he has been for a number of years. He's involved with training new meteorologists as well as projects for the North. And then in the bottom right-hand corner, that's Justin Patton. And he's been a forecaster here in Edmonton for 9 years, working on a number of projects to support forecasting in the Arctic, including a tool to help us forecast blizzards for the Mackenzie River Valley. These are just some more photos of the discussions we have. I can see Francis in these bottom 2 pictures here showing Jack how we obtain weather observations and write the products. I can see Taft time there and the weather maps. So as part of these discussions, we learned that the 2-way communication that we were having from the locals, so sharing their local knowledge and us sharing our insight behind the products, we realized these 2-way communications were vital, and we didn't want them to stop when they left, when our research assistants, Jack and Manny, left. So initially Jack and Manny said, hey, what about Facebook? We use it all the time. It would be really easy to just share information on Facebook. And we decided we would start off, University of Victoria would start off by creating a website that had a login and users and all that kind of thing. It was a little bit clunky and complicated. And then after some iterations, we figured out that, just going with what they said initially, like Facebook was the best way to go. So we eventually moved to Facebook. And after some trial and error, we settled on the name Halakpa, which I think means good weather. And that they were all set up by the RAs, and they are all moderated by the RAs as well. And they also are secret. So if you're searching for them on Facebook, you might have some difficulty. So the Meteorological Service of Canada is in the middle of a big change right now. We're changing to impact-based forecasting and alerting, and we're doing this because over time our products and alerts accuracy has improved. And before you say anything, I'm saying improved, not perfected. I know we can get better, but our products have improved in accuracy, and yet we're still seeing devastating impacts on people, land, and property due to weather events. So, we can give a perfect forecast, but if you don't know as the user or the receiver of that forecast how to prepare for that weather, what good is that perfect forecast? So part of this improvement is seeking out opportunities just like these, where we can have the opportunity to provide some of that information, that context for the product, and also where users can give us some context for what has happened to them. So by that, I mean, that's explaining the so what of the forecast. So it's explaining what a wind gust of 70 kilometers per hour with falling snow at the same time could mean to a community, rather than just giving the numbers and the forecast. And as we're in the middle of a transition right now, our tools are falling a little bit short. So, and that's especially true in the Arctic. We produce point forecasts for communities when we know that many are traveling on the land or ice or water for food or hunting or travel. We have warning criteria that doesn't always cover every instance where potentially impactful weather could occur. So in situations where existing products fall a little bit short, we really value having this direct line communication through the Facebook group to alert our partners in the communities we have built a partnership with. I have an example from March. We knew a potent cold front would bring strong wind gusts and the potential for blowing snow to the Beaufort coast. And we knew that while the major communities such as Tuktoyaktuk and Inuvik would not really see the blizzard conditions themselves, the popular areas to travel, such as Highway 10, which connects those two communities, and the ice to the north of Tuktoyaktuk, could have zero visibility for about 24 hours. I wrote a short blurb of information and posted it to our Halakpa Facebook group. And I tagged our research assistant from Tuktoyaktuk to alert him. And I'm friends with him on Facebook too, because we've built a relationship with these folks also at the same time. So I got to see when he shared it to his own account, that it was then shared 7 more times by other folks in the community. And I could see people in the comments below tagging each other and having discussions about changing their travel plans or preparing to encounter poor weather or poor visibility. And as a service-focused meteorologist, moving to a more impact-based focused product, it was so fulfilling. It's exactly what we want to see. It's the exact type of impact that we're striving to have in every part of Canada, where we can better prepare people using our products for weather that's about to occur, either through adjustments to trips or to trip planning or preparation. And it's our sincere hope to continue this service and then expand it a little bit further to other remote communities in the Arctic. The Facebook group is a great way for us to learn impacts of the weather as it happens or shortly after. Sometimes we will post questions when a weather event has recently taken place to understand the impacts, like a cold snap or a storm. Other times the research assistants will make a post unprompted, and it's often in these situations where we learn the most valuable information, because it's typically about a weather event that we don't understand to be impactful, or an impact that we don't know about yet. So these are just a few examples on this page, or sorry, a couple examples. Daryl talking about the freezing rain in Tuk, and Jack showing us about the vessel icing that occurred to his boat as well. And also, it's kind of interesting, a lot of the research assistants who are part of this work with us have existing weather sort of history. So Daryl, who is our Tuk RA, he's like a fixture of the observation program from Tuk. He did a lot of training. He's been in the role for a long time, and the same is true of Manny. So they kind of have existing information that really helps them to be a great focal point for their communities and for us. So the group continues to grow. We're actually at 38 members now, not 37. There are many community members as well as forecasters who keep up with the posts and exchanges on this page. We've had a lot of success with the Facebook group. And one thing I really want to add to you today is that it hasn't always been straightforward. We faced challenges with a few forecasters who didn't see Facebook as a valid way of disseminating information. And therefore, they pushed back when we asked for them to make posts on it or to interact on it. And I think it's important as service providers that we not only understand the culture and the needs of those in the North, but that we are self-aware of our own existing cultural norms, And we have to work to push past our own cultural norms to serve these communities in the way they are asking and need to be served, and not in the way that we believe they should be served. And part of that is adopting social media as a tool to communicate and disseminate, and especially Facebook. So some of the great benefits we've had is we have a better understanding of the use and needs by the communities from our products. We have helped to improve the safety of users out on the land. We contributed to a beluga hunt outside of Tuktoyaktuk a number of years ago, and part of the issue there is due to climate change. They had a tough time trying to identify those calm conditions where they could be out on the water and away from land, because with climate change, they were getting more and more of those abnormally timed winds, whereas they might go out at midnight in the past, but now midnight might have strong winds now. So our forecasts help them to improve their safety and better understand and anticipate the weather, and as it'll change when they go out on the water or the land. And then also, as an organization and as service providers, we have gained so much knowledge about, what is impactful weather. In the past, we saw something as not necessarily impactful, but in being able to have these two-way conversations, we now understand that it's deeply impactful, and we can keep that in mind when we deliver service in the future. So the amount of knowledge that we've gained from these interactions with these groups and communities has been invaluable, and we just hope to grow it for the future. And that's everything I wanted to say about our work in the Nunavut Settlement region. If there were any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Sarah. That was very interesting. I don't know if you know, because you look so much younger than me, that I used to be the head of the Weather Service.
I learned that today.
You did, eh? Okay, There's two people who remember now, then me and that other person, whoever it is. Anyway. No, it's very fascinating. This idea of going out into communities, to me, is important in terms of getting and knowing, and particularly, well, the Arctic. My first ever trip to the Arctic was to take the minister up there, and we went to and spent a week at Eureka and other places. But more interestingly, after I went back to academia, spending time with in that case, the ArcticNet program, I was involved in community meetings in Resolute, many in Iqaluit and other such places. I've never been to the ones that were shown on your map, but it's very important. And so we're limited in time, since there's only one more person to make a presentation, and that happens to be me. So I can't take too much time. So I'll stop talking now and invite, if there's any other questions or comments for Sarah, quick ones, please. Any hands? Oh, there, Carrie.
Hi. Hi, Sarah. Thanks very much for that presentation. I really appreciated it, the storytelling and the value of the two-way relationships, the sincere two-way relationships. One question I had, I imagine if you haven't already, you might soon be asked how you can scale up that relationship building. And rather than answer that question, because I have some critiques of that idea, I just wanted to ask you to share with us some of your thoughts about that, or just kind of reaffirm the value of the time and effort in building those one-on-one relationships. How do you respond to that question or pressure to scale up when then you lose some of the things that have been so important?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. I think the number one thing that we never want to lose sight of is the commitment to doing this in the right way. So doing it in the right way is you hire, you go to the community, you don't just go once, you're coming back, and it's usually on the trips where you come back that folks are more willing to open up to you and share with you knowledge. You also need to be contributing something back to the community. Lots of times science can have this perception of coming up there, taking knowledge and just, taking it, not contributing anything back to the community. So really searching out those situations where we can contribute something back. I think with the Facebook group, when we can contribute forecasts to hunts or travel, or, you know, those situations, I think that's a situation where we can give back some knowledge too, because it's knowledge for knowledge. But when you go to the community, it's hiring a translator, it's making sure you're going to the classes. So sometimes there's elementary schools, like giving talks at the schools, building relationships with people in the community. You know, you're not coming up here for one day and trying to bang out every piece of information that you can. You're coming for a week to build relationships and to make yourself known to the entire community, and do it in the right way, and be really respectful and acknowledge the history of what comes before us, like you know, not just government, but academia coming and not, you know, doing that engagement fatigue, asking the same question over and over and over again, and the frustration of, you know, I've been saying this for 20 years and I've seen no improvement to my service. And I've been talking to meteorologists like you. So really acknowledging that there is engagement fatigue, being cognizant of that, trying to seek out what's come before you so that you can learn from it before you go, but doing it the right way. So yeah, like you said, scaling up, I'm hesitant to do anything without doing it the right way. So we go for a week, we make sure we're coming back, we build relationships, we hire people. The other thing is we've had a lot of success with is paying our contributors. So I talked a lot about our research assistants, and a big part of our request for funding, or I should say David and Laura, they're the ones at the university level doing it, is making sure that funding for the research assistants is there. So like in our society, we really value money, and we show the value of what we perceive we're gaining or something is through paying people for it. So if they're going to spend a lot of time contributing to something and working with us on it, we pay them for their time to show them that we value and respect their time and their contributions. So building into funding requests that payment for the people we're working with. I think that's another big part of it. So I'm hesitant to do anything too flippantly with, you know, other communities. We do have our sights set on expanding in the Nunavut settlement region, but we all totally understand the commitment to doing it the right way. And in fact, Laura, the person I was talking about in the initial slides, she has like weekly conversations with people from the communities. She knows who's been born, who's passed away, who's moved away. You know what I mean? Like we can never, the amount of work that takes, the amount of time that takes, but it's what's needed. And we've been so grateful to have that partnership with her, so that when we come with her, the community goes, we know Laura, we trust who she brings with her. So building those relationships is critical too.
Well, thank you very much, Sarah. That's been very interesting. I think in view of the time, I better go on to the next speaker. But thank you very much. So the next speaker is me. So I will share my screen if I get the right one. Okay. Okay, I just wanted to very quickly go through something that I'd been thinking of. I've modified this as I've been going along, but what I really want to talk about is the various dimensions of climate resilient communities. But in view of the discussion, I've modified this, and I'll just say quickly, I want to first of all talk about the Sustainable Development Goals. See if I can make these things a bit, anyway. The Sustainable Development Goals are very important in that they help us think about how all these things are interconnected, because they really are. It's not just 17 goals, but their interactions are very strong. For example, between climate action, life below water, life on land, feeding up to the issues of food, poverty, good health and well-being, and of course, relating to things like energy, as Charles Lynn talked about, infrastructure, sustainable cities and communities and all. And if you're not aware, recently it was announced that Prime Minister Trudeau is co-chairing the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals Advocates Group, which is a group that is supposed to motivate action towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. And I guess just saying, trying to be not too political, we as a community need to encourage him and push him on this so that we get actions as we need to. So I've been working with a group called let's say the Global Food Community. And so I took out other slides, but I just wanted to talk about this from this perspective. And first of all, though, talk about what the Secretary General of the United Nations has been saying. As he says here, science informs governments in their decision-making and commitments. I urge leaders to heed these facts, unite behind the science, and take ambitious, active, urgent action to halt global heating and set a path towards a safer, more sustainable future for all. As he said, when we come out of this pandemic, we don't want to go back to the old normal. Let's go to the new course, change course. And as I said in a presentation a few hours ago where you were listening, if I had to select one sentence to describe the state of the world that we're in, I would say it's a world in which the global challenges are more and more integrated and the responses are more and more fragmented. And if that's not reversed, it's a recipe for disaster. So we need an integrated approach to addressing issues of food crises, health crises, integrated scientific, science-based actions to reduce the risk and meet global needs. So the Secretary General has been involved in creating what became in 2021 the Global Food Summit. And I just talking about how it links to climate change, disaster risk reduction, sustainable development goals. And there's an organization called the International Union of Food, Science, and Technology, which holds roundtables, and I've been a participant in these, and it's really fascinating to meet with people around the world, Zoom lately, but earlier in real conferences, to discuss the issues of food safety and reviews of the things with special emphasis on resilience. How do we get these systems to be more, let's say, able to survive, and make sure that our food practices are reinforced by good food safety habits that we have developed during the pandemic. And as he goes on to, as we go on to say, the food science and technology people need to be really brought into, as Sarah was talking about and Charles was talking about before that, and Rick Lawford at the end of the last session. We need to bring the science and the technology and the entrepreneurs together in terms of having a role in government policy and contingency planning so that we have, in this case, food supply chains that are resilient and survive and enhance the shocks and changes like the pandemic, but also the stresses of climate change, which is what we're focusing on. So the food system is one that really provides a way of linking to, and that's what both Charles and Sarah have been talking about, and also I think Rick earlier and others, how much we need to get out and speak to people, that we need to talk to them. And so food is one that you can talk about. Food and health, I find when I talk to public groups, high school groups, church groups, whatever, that's a thing that gets their interest, the issue of food safety and health, generally speaking. And food systems are really interacting very much with our whole environmental systems, our economies, our culture. We're seeing that in the Ukraine terrible situation now, as one case. And too many food systems are fragile, unexamined, and vulnerable to collapse. We've seen this. And unfortunately, it's the poor and marginalized people who are the most vulnerable and most impacted. So we need to be able to see how we can look at this. So the Food System Summit was held in 2021, late in the year, to come up with a decade of action to achieve Sustainable Development Goals by 2030 for the food system area, but also overall of this kind of thing. And as the Secretary General said, we need to launch bold new actions to deliver progress in all 17 of the SDGs, each of which relies to some degree on a healthier, more sustainable and equitable food systems. And so for that, they want to transform in this discussion with the food safety, food science, and technology communities that I've been involved with, how we transform the way we produce, we consume, the way we think about food in terms of a new food system. And out of that, they came up with what are called 5 action tracks. I'll just show these quickly on this slide. The 5 action tracks, number 1 was to work towards ensuring safe access to safe and nutritious food for all. Number 2 was shifting to sustainable consumption patterns, get rid of the huge waste in the food system. Number 3 is delivering nature positive production at a sufficient scale, getting into nature-based solutions and that kind of thing. Addressing the issue of advancing equitable livelihoods and value distribution by and the one that I'll just mention slightly more is the building resilience. The topic that I've been focusing on is how we build resilience, in this case, to vulnerabilities, shocks, and stresses in our global food system, but with recognizing the Sustainable Development Goals and all their interactions, how we address them in dealing with all of them. So on the case of track 5, building resilience to vulnerabilities, shocks, and stresses, the principles they came up with were very similar to what we can adopt for other things. So for food systems resilience comes really down to the issues of anticipating. In other words, warning system, talking about what Sarah and others talked about, going to the north, but giving people information about warnings of things that will happen. How do we do things to take action so that we reduce exposure and vulnerability, so the impact, we can prevent the impact from overwhelming us? How do we absorb things in those cases where the impacts can be handled and not overwhelm the system? We need to adapt to an evolving risk in different ways and transform the ways in which the current food systems aren't sustainable and move them and transform them. So in all, we need a clear understanding and consideration of food systems, but I just take this as in the context of what we've been talking about. As Rick Lawford at the end of part 3 of this session talked about the WEF, the water, energy, food nexus, to bringing those together. We need to bring these things together, water, energy, food, the whole issue of the carbon system, the climate system, their interrelationships, as Charles Lynn talked about, and how the impacts of weather in the north, is particularly vulnerable areas, as Sarah was talking about. So I'm going to just end with a couple of slides to this, right? Just to say, what have we tried to do in the global science community that I'm involved in? We have, first of all, if you the International Council for Science, which has been around since the 1930s. In June 2018, we formally merged the International Council for Science with the International Social Science Council to create the Global International Science Council, as we could say, all science for the benefit of global humanity, working together to make benefits. And this brings together all of these various kinds of organizations. The council, the ICSU, the International Council of Scientific Unions, as it used to be called, or the Council for Science, involved the food science and technology, but also math, physics, chemistry, biology, remote sensing, geology, anthropology, and geodesy and geophysics, which is the international union of that, which includes the unions on atmospheric science, on oceanography and geophysics, etc. And you bring that together with organizations that were actually already members of both, like geography, sociology, and psychology, with the International Social Science, other councils, including the Arctic Social Sciences, public opinion experts, population people, very importantly, economics people, political science people, legal science, etc. And by merging this, the organization, the new International Science Council, and well, this is the old Secretariat Board of the Science Council. That's this old looking guy in the middle is me. But here's the new, probably outdated now it is, Anyway, this is the executive board of the new International Science Council, as we said, and all science as a global public good, to bring together, including the climate, weather, hydrology, human safety, health, security issues. So I just want to say the science community is trying to work together. We're working with them to try and motivate the science to play roles in the issues of food safety and health, the issues of the global carbon cycle, reducing emissions, achieving net zero. And we also have created within Canada, to address these, the need to bring together the transdisciplinary and community expertise to address the climate challenges, push the global agenda, the Canadian Association of Professionals in Climate Change. The word professionals in this case just means people who have more than just a nice thinking instrument, but actually really work on it in various ways, but across all the issues of economics, engineering, as well as natural and social sciences. As it says, its main function is to enhance the interdisciplinary nature, influence, professionalism, scientific excellence, and overall value of the climate profession within Canada and beyond, and uniquely bring this group together. And we are in the process of creating this. We've got an national board, technically coast to coast. It's created initially with support of the University of Prince Edward Island. I'm the chair of the association board, and we've got people from various parts of Canada, Dave Sochin from Regina, Lane Bourque from Oranos in Quebec, Montreal, others in other parts of Atlantic Canada, Deb Harford from the West Coast, and a couple of others from the West Coast, a First Nations representative, and some others who are all part of this. And the idea is to bring this organization and move it into place to help motivate the climate change professional community across all the issues to be outspoken, but also to be professional in moving ahead with good solid advice as to how to do these things. And with that, we'll end with the Meeting the Climate Challenge slide I like to show. This was based on well, first of all, as I say here, this is how you do science based on building on Einstein and others, but for the benefit of your children and grandchildren. My daughter here is a chemical engineer in a company factory in Canada. She's now created a Facebook page on addressing climate science, and she has mottos and things to do with climate change on everything, including her car. And she has an electric car, Charles, just so you know. I don't yet, but my next car will be electric. And we do it for children and grandchildren all around the world. So whether they're from the north or from Asia or from other areas. And I liked when we had a climate march in London, Ontario, some of the signs people were carrying: fight climate change or die frying. There is no planet B, as this one says. And there were other ones. And so we need to have action. And for that, I'll end by saying thank you for your actions now and in the future, and we'll work together on these things. So thank you very much. I probably still went on longer than I should have, but if there's any comments or questions, they're welcome. All right, I will end. How do I get out of sharing screen? I stopped. Anyway, I don't know. Oh, I stop on this one. Oh, there it is. So any questions or comments? Neil McDonald. You got your hand up, Neil. Did you mean to?
Oh, okay. I did. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so that was a very interesting talk. Thank you. I'm wondering if your association has any plans to maybe even invite current politicians to be part of the discussions as well. Just to allow for another angle of thinking and ideas into the discussion as well.
Yes, we would. We could allow them to be members, I suppose, but the idea is certainly to discuss with them. I have, well, to be open, I'm an active member of the Liberal Party of Canada. I'm not as happy with what things are going on as I used to be, but my candidate in London West, who used to be our member of parliament, got elected because of my standing up and saying she was the one to do and not to pick that other guy because he was a climate denier. And she won. She stepped down. Anyway, I think there is a role and we need to work with the political community, and I have some experience in doing that.
All right, interesting. Thank you.
Mindy. Oh, sorry, Charles and then Mindy. Well, we'll get Mindy next since she's had her hand up. Anyway. Oh, Charles, you go next. Yeah, go ahead, Charles.
Okay, thanks, Gordon. Nice presentation. You mentioned food waste. I read somewhere, IPCC, I think, rates food waste in terms of GHG emissions. If it were a country, food waste would be number 3 in the world, 6% behind US and China. So my question is, you mentioned food waste in one of the boxes. Can you say a bit more and whether you have any activities planned for Canada on reducing food waste?
Well, I don't personally have any plans, but I'm working with this group called the International Union of Food Science and Technology has been talking about this and working with it. And it turns out the woman who is the executive director of this union of scientists, which is presently chaired by a scientist from India, and the vice chair to be chair is from Africa. So it's a global network of scientists on food science and technology. They're not really involved in agriculture. They're more involved in the processing, the use, the transportation of food. But anyway, the executive director actually lives in Oakville, Ontario. And I have proposed, we'll see if it gets accepted, a Canadian Science Policy Conference panel on the issues of food safety and health. And we'd like to bring this up. So I've got 5 speakers lined up if they accept it. I don't know if you know of Eliane Ulubagaro, she's the head of the Future Earth office in Montreal. Actually, her background is in food and this kind of things too. And she's working on sustainability in the digital age as the main project out of the Future Earth program in Montreal. Eliane was a speaker in the plenary session I chaired last week.
Thank you. We can touch base offline
Yeah,
on that.
we'll check on that one outside. So Mindy, you're next.
It's really great. And I definitely agree with the food waste and insecurity problems. My question for you is dealing with young people of all ages who really have lost faith, and even scientists are so stressed out by this whole issue with climate warming that we're not doing, that they're becoming ineffective. I know some phenomenal young people, and it just almost destroys them. So I just was wondering what your thoughts are in doing this effort, how we can help mobilize and strengthen the mental agility of people.
Well, I guess I just say that I think what the issue you've identified is very important to me and to all of us. And I think we have to work together to see how we can do this better. I think involving young people is critical in these issues. I've found that dealing with, well, I have 4 grandkids who are all, actually, to show my age, they're all around 20 or 22 or 3 years of age. And we spend time talking with them about these issues. And I've gone to the university, 2 of them are at Peterborough, Trent University in Peterborough, and 1 in Carleton University in Ottawa. And I've spoken to classes there. I think it's important that we work with the younger people in high schools and things to get their inputs, their advice, their guidance, and offense following what Sarah was talking about, the need to get out and not just ask for information from them, but to sit down and talk to them, as she's talked about doing with people in the North. And I think we have to, as a community, work together, and hopefully we can activate CMOS to become more involved in this, but as a community, the Climate Professionals Organization. I've talked with Jim Abraham, who's on this call. I think he's still, well, his name is still there, about this when we were creating it. I don't want to create an organization that seemed as competing with CMOS, but instead working together in a collaboration way. And we need to work with the new, well, the zero in, sorry, impact net zero group, if I get it right this time, Charles. Thank you. And Mindy, are you with the ECC or you're just, no?
Yeah, I'm with Environment Canada, but I guess I could jump and retire anytime I wanted. But one of my concerns with this too is I had actually had a relative who told me to don't talk about climate change anymore because her daughter was gonna quit her degree and do all this stuff. And she's a brilliant gal and she did finally finish and she's doing other things. But the degree of passion and grief, particularly in young people, is astounding. And the degree of apathy in a lot of seniors that I know is equally astounding. So I just hope through what we're doing, we can find ways to encourage. Some of it is encouraging parents to not be afraid that their children will find a way to make the world better. And this is their problem and we need to help them with it. Anyway, just
yeah, no, thank you. Just to say that as I spoke about in the previous session part 2, I had this project on building resilient communities. And what was most interesting to me was the learning I got from having 5 medical doctors on this team, including Dr. Anna Guntz, who's a pediatric specialist in London with the hospitals, as well as at Western University's medical school. And she was just so, well, interesting in things, but also committed. And she's still calling me or sending me notes regularly saying, anything I can do more, let's get me involved in things. And I want to do that. So there's people like that who want to, and maybe by bringing some of those medical health people, this mental health, she wrote a lot of that parts of that report I was talking about on. She was the lead author on it and put in a lot of mental health issues and wording. Thank you. So I think then now, if there's no more questions, and it's 6:22, this session was supposed to have ended an hour ago. No, not now. Anyway, I think we can probably wrap it up for today. I don't know, is Francis Weir still here and Jim Abraham, the CMOS bosses? And yeah. I guess we can close the session if there's no further questions and go on to the formal closing of this. Did Stephanie want to say something? You're Stephanie? No, you're up on my screen for some reason. Anyway, I don't see any other hands up. So at this point, I saw Francis's face for a second there. There he is.
I'm still here, Gordon. I'd just like to invite people to the closing ceremony at 1:45 in about 20 minutes time.
So we got time for 20 minutes of wine drinking.
Exactly. Yeah, take me to the bar, please. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. Thank you very much. And we'll all hopefully join next CMOS next time, which will be in wherever, Ottawa or somewhere. Okay, thank you.
Next one will be in Newfoundland. Yeah.
Oh, really? That's good. Whereabouts? Grenville or in
St. John's?
John? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I've attended at least 1 or 2 in St. John's. So
if you're going to be virtuous, then you'll participate virtually.
Okay. No, I won't be virtuous by then. I'll get right involved. Okay. Thank you very much. And thanks for organizing this great conference, Francis, and for you and all the team. Thank you. So we will, at least I will leave and everyone else is invited to do so, but join the closing ceremonies momentarily. Thank you all. Au revoir, la prochaine fois.